Every time Ferrari loses control of Lewis Hamilton's race, the FIA seems to be there to make sure the damage becomes even greater. Hungary should have been the weekend when Hamilton fought his way back into the championship battle. The SF26 was extremely quick on Friday. The characteristics of the Hungaroring suited Ferrari, and Hamilton missed pole position by just 0.012 seconds. But before the race had even started, he had already received a 3-place grid penalty for impeding Oscar Piastri, an incident that occurred after Ferrari warned him too late about the approaching McLaren. Frédéric Vasseur admitted that the warning had come too late. Yet Hamilton was still the one who suffered the biggest consequence. He dropped to 5th, lost his place on the front row, and had to recover at a circuit where overtaking is notoriously difficult. On Sunday, the situation became even worse. Ferrari called Hamilton into the pits twice and released him directly into traffic on both occasions. The undercut against Max Verstappen briefly worked, but that advantage disappeared when Hamilton failed to anticipate Verstappen's attack at turn 1. Hamilton immediately admitted, "Sorry, I lost the position, I wasn't expecting it." A second opportunity arrived when Piastri suffered a gearbox failure. Hamilton moved into second place, but Ferrari called him in again when the virtual safety car was activated. He rejoined behind Verstappen and Antonelli before receiving a 5-second penalty for exceeding the pit lane speed limit by just 0.1 kilometers per hour. "Every time I give these stewards an opportunity, they give me a penalty," Hamilton said after the race. It sounded like the frustration of a driver who knew his own mistakes were real, but whose punishment continued to be magnified by situations partly created by his team. So, does Hamilton's growing list of penalties show that the FIA is applying an unusually unforgiving standard to him? Or does the real problem lie with Ferrari repeatedly placing its driver in high-risk situations? Subscribe for the full analysis, because the answer is not found only in that 0.1 kilometers per hour infringement, but in every decision made from Q3 until the virtual safety car. The most important point is that Hamilton was not claiming complete innocence. He did not pretend the pit lane infringement never happened, and he did not publicly transfer responsibility for every setback to Ferrari or the stewards. In fact, his post-race assessment was unusually direct. "Silverstone was my fault, Belgium was my fault, and today was my fault as well, so I have nothing to blame the team for," Hamilton said. That admission matters because it prevents this from becoming a simplistic argument about conspiracy. Hamilton knows that he has made mistakes. The concern is what happens after those mistakes occur. Across the last 3 Grand Prix, he has collected 4 penalties. Across the previous 6 rounds, the total has reached 5. Each incident can be explained individually, but together they have created a pattern in which even the smallest error produces a serious competitive consequence. Hungary offered the clearest example because Hamilton's 2 penalties were connected to situations Ferrari had helped create. The first came in qualifying. Ferrari had the pace to fight for pole, and Hamilton was in contention during Q3. But the team sent him out first for the final runs and then failed to give him sufficient warning that Piastri was approaching on a flying lap. Vasseur later acknowledged that the information arrived too late. Hamilton was driving the car that impeded Piastri, so the penalty was applied to him. That is how the sporting responsibility works. But the incident was not produced solely by a driver ignoring clear information. It was also a communication failure from the pit wall. The 3-place grid drop changed the entire structure of Hamilton's Grand Prix. Instead of starting near the front with access to clean air, he began 5th at a circuit where overtaking is difficult and track position is unusually valuable. Ferrari had transformed a potential front-row start into a recovery race before the lights went out. Even then, Hamilton's launch gave the team another opportunity. Ferrari started both cars on soft tyres while the other leading contenders chose mediums. Charles Leclerc, starting second on a used set of softs, suffered wheel spin and dropped to 5th. Hamilton gained 2 positions, moved ahead of his teammate, and immediately attacked Verstappen. The Ferrari appeared quicker, but being quicker around the Hungaroring does not guarantee an overtake. Hamilton spent the opening stint close to the Red Bull, while Verstappen defended the available routes. Meanwhile, Norris and Piastri were able to build an advantage at the front. Ferrari attempted to solve the problem strategically by stopping Hamilton on lap 14. He emerged behind Arvid Lindblad, but completed an impressive pass through the circuit's twisting second sector and then produced the outlap needed to undercut Verstappen. For a brief moment, Ferrari's decision had worked. Then Verstappen responded. After the two drivers cleared Liam Lawson, Verstappen used the slipstream and attacked into turn 1. Hamilton did not protect the inside decisively enough and lost the position he and Ferrari had just worked to gain. This part was Hamilton's mistake, and he admitted it immediately. But it also returned him to the traffic that Ferrari had been trying to escape. His tyre temperatures increased, the car became more difficult to manage, and the strategic advantage of stopping early disappeared almost immediately. Ferrari tried another undercut around lap 30, yet Hamilton again rejoined behind another Red Bull, this time Isaac Hadjar. He could not clear Hadjar until the following lap and complained that the timing of the stop had compromised the undercut. That meant Hamilton had been released into traffic after both of his first two stops. Each time, he was required to use the initial performance of his tyres to pass a slower car before he could resume the race Ferrari had intended for him. There were also deeper concerns about the SF26. Hamilton began to struggle with understeer during the second stint, partly while trying to protect the rear tyres. On lap 36, he asked whether his tyres would become a problem before the end. Ferrari's response revealed its immediate priority. Race engineer Carlo Santi told him, "Now we take the position from Max, then we'll think about managing the tyres." It was not necessarily evidence of a disagreement, but it showed that Hamilton and the pit wall were thinking across different time frames. Hamilton was considering the final phase of the race. Ferrari was concentrating on the next strategic contest with Verstappen. That tension remained unresolved until Piastri's gearbox failure changed everything on lap 56. With Piastri out, Hamilton inherited second place. His hard tyres were worn and Verstappen had a fresher set, so keeping the Red Bull behind to the finish would not have been easy. But second place belonged to Hamilton at that moment, and even if Verstappen eventually passed him, third remained a realistic outcome. Ferrari chose not to defend that track position. It called both cars into the pits under the virtual safety car and fitted soft tyres. The apparent expectation was that Hamilton would rejoin ahead of Antonelli and then use the tyre advantage to attack Verstappen. The calculation was wrong. Antonelli had crossed the safety car line first by a tiny margin. Hamilton was therefore instructed to return the position to the Mercedes driver rather than risk another sanction. Verstappen stayed out and moved into second, while Hamilton dropped to fourth. Hamilton later explained how little opportunity he had been given to evaluate the decision. "I wasn't really sure why we stopped at the end," he said. "I got the call just before the pit entry, so I didn't have time to discuss it. I would never have stopped if I thought I was going to lose track position." That statement exposes the central weakness in Ferrari's execution. The team made a decision with major consequences, communicated it at the final moment, and apparently misjudged where Hamilton would emerge. The fresh soft tyres were supposed to create an attacking opportunity, but the Hungaroring's limited overtaking possibilities made track position more valuable than theoretical pace. Hamilton believed Verstappen might have caught him anyway, but he still considered a podium achievable. "I think we probably would have lost the position to Max," he admitted. "He had fresher tyres, but it most likely would have been third, and that would have been much better. Instead, we lost quite a lot of points." Then came the penalty that ensured the damage could not be contained. The steward stated that car 44 had exceeded the 80 km per hour pit lane limit by 0.1 km per hour. The measurement was automatic, and the regulation left no meaningful space for interpretation. Hamilton had crossed the threshold, so he received 5 seconds. Technically, the decision was straightforward. Competitively, its effect was enormous. 1/10 of 1 km per hour was enough to move Hamilton behind Leclerc in the final classification and leave him 5th in a race where he had briefly inherited second. This is where the sense of unfairness becomes understandable, even without evidence that the FIA deliberately treated Hamilton differently. The infringement was real, but the margin was almost impossibly small. The punishment was fixed, while its effect depended entirely on the gaps at the finish. Once again, a minor Hamilton error carried a disproportionately expensive result. His radio reaction captured that accumulated frustration. "There you go, they're handing out penalties left, right and centre," Hamilton said. Ferrari cannot dismiss its part in the sequence. The speeding offence belonged to the driver, but the stop itself belonged to the team. Without Ferrari's late VSC call, there would have been no additional pit entry, no 0.1 km/h infringement, and no 5-second penalty. Vasseur did not attempt to disguise the broader failure. "When you finish first and second on Friday, you expect a different result," he said. "But everything went wrong. We were the only ones to be overtaken on track by Max Verstappen, and we also picked up penalties." He also admitted Ferrari chose the wrong tyre sequence. Starting on softs was not necessarily the mistake, but he believes soft, hard would probably have been the better strategy. "We made 2 gambles," Vasseur explained. "I can say that our gambles did not pay off today." Leclerc's experience reinforced the uncertainty. He described the first soft stint as reasonable and the first hard stint as good, but said he had no feeling on his second set of hards. The softs worked again at the end. "It is very difficult to find consistency with this car," Leclerc said. "The really strange thing is that in the last 3 races, the exact opposite of what we expected has happened." That inconsistency made strategic judgment harder, but it does not excuse every decision. Ferrari knew track position was critical. It knew overtaking opportunities were limited. It had already watched Hamilton lose time after being released into traffic twice. Yet when Piastri's retirement handed Hamilton second place, Ferrari gambled again. Hamilton therefore left Hungary facing 2 uncomfortable realities. He must stop giving the stewards opportunities to punish him, however small those opportunities may be. But Ferrari must also stop creating the confused, high-pressure scenarios in which those mistakes become more likely. The team gained only 1 point on Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship, reducing the deficit from 73 to 72. Hamilton entered the summer break 50 points behind Antonelli in the Drivers' Championship. At a circuit where Ferrari expected to fight for victory, that was an inadequate return. Hamilton's conclusion was blunt. "Both Charles and I knew we had a car that should have put us in the top 3, but instead we finished 4th and 5th. So it wasn't perfect execution, it was a missed opportunity. We should have won this weekend." The FIA applied the written rules. Hamilton committed the infringements. Ferrari made the strategic calls. All 3 statements can be true simultaneously, but when the same driver repeatedly finds that communication failures, confused decisions and microscopic infringements combine to destroy major results. Scrutiny is inevitable. So is Hamilton simply making too many costly mistakes? Is the FIA applying its rules to him with unusually unforgiving precision? Or is Ferrari creating the chaos that ensures every small error becomes another major penalty? Tell us what you think in the comments.